everybody. Welcome to another episode of Guitar Talk. I'm Mike Higgins, and I will be your host today. That little bit of noodling around you just heard on the guitar was a quick little tribute to one of my influences in the 70s who we lost yesterday, the great composer and virtuoso guitar player, Mr. Allan Holdsworth. And he really set the bar pretty high for the jazz fusion folks out there when he came onto the scene, using these kinds of chords. And that was a little chord thing that he used to work with when he was in the Tony Williams Lifetime Project. So I just wanted to get that out there. Welcome aboard to the show. Today we're going to talk a little bit about a particular type of amplifier. And today we're going to talk about the Princeton Reverb, which is just a little gem of an amplifier. Its simplicity is what makes it sound so good. It's so pure and clean in its tone, and it's got a lot more horsepower than a lot of people would think, given its diminutive size. They were produced from 1964 to 1967, and then in 68-ish, there started to be some slight changes. They came out with what was known as the drip edge, where there was a cosmetic little drip thing around the baffle board, and they switched over to that silver-colored faceplate instead of the one prior to that, which everyone knows is the blackface model. However, the smaller the silver examples, underwent the fewest amount of circuitry changes, probably than all its older and bigger brethren in the line. And this one that we have today, folks, is a 1969 Princeton Reverb. And this one specs out, without any modifications, to be really a blackface circuit. This has what is known as the AA764 circuit, which was present in the later blackface models. There was 3 different circuits, and that's what this one has inside of it. The later Silverface models went to a circuitry that had a push-pull feature on the volume knob that a lot of folks would argue kind of ruined the sound of the amp. If you left that circuit disengaged, though, it really didn't. It remained out of it and sounded fine. Some of the other changes that this particular example went through early on would be the rectifier tube. They went from the 5U4 over to the GZ34. This has the GZ34, which is still considered late blackface. The rectifier tube, for those of you who follow this sort of thing, can determine whether an amp is tighter in the low end. Your bass notes, they don't have any flabbiness to them, depending on the speaker and things, of course. And to the opposite end of that, which can create more of a sag or almost a compression in the sound. Both very desirable sounds. It's a matter of personal choice. But these Silverface Princetons, they are rising in value very quickly. And it's because they offer you the same sound, essentially, as the blackface models if you know what to look for. And you don't pay the premium. A blackface model exactly like this would be at least $1,000 more in price because of its collectability. And if it's made prior to 1965, 64 and 65, the pre-CBS era, it's going to go up another $1,000. So these are really getting crazy in the cost. And but they're worth it. They're really wonderful amps. And I'm going to play a little bit more. Right now I have the volume on this at 3. And I could probably play out in most small clubs at this volume. And it's going to be tight. No breakup. It's beautiful for country or nice fat rhythm kind of guitar tone there, you know. Here's the middle position. And of course, that's the classic Fender sound that most people think of when they see one of these amps. And of course, it's a wonderful match for a Fender Telecaster. This is one of the most widely recorded combinations in history. The Princeton and the Deluxe Reverb are the amp of choice in most studio guitar players' arsenals. And for good reason. They could get the wonderful breakup sound out of these without blowing down the walls of the studio. And these have an incredible reverb on them, and the tremolo is really one of the better in the series. It's funny because you can have a Deluxe, a Princeton, and a Vibrolux all have, say, all 1969 versions. They're going to sound completely different. Completely different. There are differences in the circuitries, not tons, but one of the things that's cool about this one, and it's by design, is the phase inverter tube, which I think is V4, if you pull them out in the back. It's really inefficient for this circuit, and it caused this amplifier to have a really nice distortion. And of course, as we know in the old days, they didn't want distortion. They wanted it clean, clean, clean. There's a fine line, really. I mean, the old Brown Fender amps, they distort so quickly, that's about all they do. They do it really nicely, though. And when we get into the later 70s examples of the Princetons and the twin reverbs and the Deluxes, they almost didn't distort at all, when that really was undesirable in the latter models, as Leo Fender went for a much more clean headroom in his design. And the thing that's really cool is Leo Fender never played guitar, and he made the best guitars and amps that we've come to know and love. So these models from the late 60s into the early 70s are really gems. Without the high price tag, you still get the great sound. You could do a surf gig, this thing's got so much reverb. Right now, the reverb is on 3, probably about where a lot of guys like it. You've got the... You can hear a little splash after that, but it's just right. Let's just bring it up 1 notch to 4, and you're going to hear a big difference. Oh, yeah. You're in Otis Rush territory there, you know, and if we go up more, let's bring it up to 6. That's quite a sound coming out of a little amplifier. Now I'm going to bring the volume up, guys. We're going to come up to 5 on the volume. Now I'm going to bring the reverb down, because I found with these amps, as the volume comes up, it'll drive the reverb tube to produce more verb. So you got to know how these controls interact. Now here's the volume on 5 on the bridge pickup. Nice, still clean, but we're starting to get some of that gravy on the sound that we all love. Very impressive sound. Now we'll see what it sounds like when we push it into the sweet spot, which I think is about 7 on this amp. We can develop pinch harmonics, all kinds of sounds. You really get into some rock and roll territory here. That's really nice. You could record anywhere with anybody with that kind of a sound with this small little combo. It's 15 watts, but it's 15 watts of tube power with a very simple and limited circuit, so you get all the tone. to me, every time you take away a knob, you add tone. I don't know, maybe it's because I'm getting old and I see it that way, but less is more. Nothing against the guys with the fancier amps that have got the channel switching features and things, but I like to plug into something, turn up a knob, and bingo, there's a great sound. And these are simple in that regard. Now I'm going to let you hear the tremolo on this. I backed the volume down. That's gig volume. We're at volume 5. If I push it, I got some bite. I back off. It's as clean as you could want. So let's put some vibrato on. That's lovely. You could play with that sound all day and never get tired of it. That's with the speed set fairly low. Let's bring it up a little bit. You'll hear the difference. The time's going quicker. Some swampy kind of rock. Really nice vibrato. So really everything you need is right there in that little combo with a little reverb, some vibrato, and learning how to use the interaction between the volume and tone controls. Now the next thing we'll talk about with these amps, and a lot of studio guys started doing this in the 60s actually, in the late 60s, was modifying the amplifiers to better suit their needs in the studio. And it's no small note either that the original Mesa Boogie amplifiers were modified Princeton reverbs. They're wonderful platforms for that sort of work, and there's a lot you can do. But my first disclaimer, I am not an amp technician. I know less about amp technology and electronics than probably you do that are listening. But what I have learned in my decades of playing with these are some things you can do that are inexpensive and absolutely safe. And the first and easiest is a loudspeaker. If you think of an amplifier and a speaker is the same thing as a person, here's the equation that I'll use. This stuff up here is the brain, okay? That determines what it's thinking, what's going on as you make adjustments. Think of the speaker is the mouthpiece. That does the talking. So that's going to talk in a way that you tell it to, depending on how you adjust it. Now, each speaker has an accent, if you will, for lack of a better term, or a coloration. They have frequencies, highs and lows that some are stronger and weaker at, and points where they have higher and lower headrooms. Not so different than the human voice in some ways. You don't need any electronic experience to change a speaker. unless it's soldered in, you'll have to know how to use a soldering iron to break the solder joints. What I recommend, and I do this to my amps, is I break the solder joints, then I put clips on, so that in the future, if I want to do speaker swaps, I don't have to keep resoldering them. And if you buy good clips, it's just as good a connection as if you were to solder it on. So what we've done with this amp, folks, is we've changed the speaker. I have the original one boxed up safely at home because I like to play this amp loud and I don't want to blow up the original speaker. Okay? These originally come with a 10-inch speaker, and they could have been Jensen's, they could have been Oxfords, Utah's. Fender used different speakers through the years, and there's various points of quality and not so high quality about each one of those speakers that vintage enthusiasts like to talk about and argue the qualities of. Nowadays, it's so easy to do these incredible modifications. I've upgraded this speaker to a 12-inch speaker. And one of the challenges you'll immediately face when doing that is the hole in the speaker baffle is only for a 10-inch speaker. I wasn't about to go taking a circular saw to a vintage baffle board from 1969. But there's companies out there now, I bought mine from Mojo Tone, that sell them pre-cut to tolerances that are spectacular. They fit better than the originals, in fact. And they even put the Fender grill cloth on. I didn't put the logo on because I didn't want to take it off the old one. So we have a new baffle board with the old one safely at home and a brand new WGS speaker in here. So this amp sounds unbelievable now with the improved speaker. And there's so many choices out there that you can satisfy anybody's most particular needs in what they want to hear from the speaker. So if you buy a few over the couple of years and you save them, you can really tailor the amp now, sound-wise, to almost any type of band or music you would like to play. And for those of you that like to use pedals for effects, now with a 12-inch speaker, you've got more headroom. So when you hit it with a dB rate that's higher, like with an overdrive pedal or a boost, it's going to take it nicely. So you're going to get a wonderful sound there. One of the other things about these vintage amps that is nice is later on they started gluing in the baffle boards, and it really makes it a pain in the neck to change them. The old ones just have 3 screws on each side. You take them out, pop it out, change your speaker, and good to go. So that's really a great thing. Now, I'm going to crank up the treble a little bit more, bring the volume up to 7 now, a little over 7. Turn the reverb back down so it doesn't get splashy. And this is just a great rock sound. And first, note how clean it still is. Just on the very edge of breakup, not much. I'm picking very hard. So it has that quality that a lot of the blues guys love, myself included, called touch sensitivity. And it means just what it sounds like. Play lightly. Sounds clean as you want. Now as I turn it up, it starts to really respond. Now I'm all the way. It's perfect. I can get anything I need by just controlling the guitar now. Clean. We'll do some country flavored stuff. very clean, and it's all handled right here at the guitar. So that's the beauty of that particular circuit, and it's widely, you hear it talked about on a lot of the guitar forums and things that that AA764 circuit is the one a lot of people like to hear in this particular amp for this reason. Everything's right there at your fingertips, and you don't even need any pedals. And as I get older, which seems to be happening rapidly, incidentally, I find that I want so much less out of my rig. I want to be able to just do this at a gig. Plug in a good guitar into a good amp and get everything I need. And for, most roots, Americana style music, blues, country, and jazz, that's all you ever need anyway. And a great amp like these, one thing I've always noticed is if you're having a great night, you're going to sound as good as you possibly ever can. And if you're playing a little off that night, it's going to be noticeable because these really reflect the nuances of your touch and your and the notes and tone. So it really responds to the individual player. That's why you could hand this guitar and amp, to some of my buddies. Mike Roberts, finest country picker in the state, in my opinion. He's going to sound totally different with this guitar and amp than I do. I hand this guitar over to Duke Robillard, you're going to get a different sound. I bump it over to Tommy or to Neil Vitullo, and they're going to make it cry and scream in ways that you're just like, wow, how'd that come out of that guitar and amp? So it's wonderful that it's such a personalized kind of a thing when you've got a good guitar and amp that can do that. And these will do it. So right now we're going to take you to a public service announcement, and we'll be right back with you. And it's great to have you here today, folks, on Guitar Talk. Be back in just a minute. Welcome back. Just noodling around a little on this wonderful combination of a Telecaster and a Fender Princeton Reverb, which we've examined today in some length. One of the final modifications we'll talk about, folks, we covered this loudspeaker, is tubes. That'll really have a big impact on your sound, especially the first two preamp tubes. And the phase inverter as well, but in this particular case, it's a single channel amp. So if you just change the first preamp tube, It's amazing the difference that it can make. These run on 7025s, 12AX7s, and 6V6s. If you can find them and if you can afford them, high quality matched up new old stock RCA tubes are what this amp was designed to run on. And boy, can you hear the difference as opposed to, say, modern tubes made in Asia. They don't last long, they don't sound as good. They're okay, but when you hear the real stuff in there, you can't believe the difference. So it's fun hunting for tubes. You can find them in old organs, Hammond organs, TV sets. Pull them and find out if they work. And you can really turn an average amp into a mind-blowing amp. Even the later model reissues of this are very nice. They had the wisdom to put a tube rectifier in the new one, and it makes a big difference. Put in a decent speaker and some vintage tubes, and you can really bring them up to a level that a lot of folks might not know the difference. And that alone, along with the speaker, can do wonders for your amp. So I'd like to thank you all for being here today, and I hope you learned a little something about one of these amps. And if you've got one sitting at home in a closet, you'd like to bring it on the show, I'd love to have you. Thank you for listening to Guitar Talk. God bless you all. We'll see you soon, okay?